What is up, fellas? Today we're talking about anxiety because I would say more and more people are struggling with anxiety as men as compared to like a couple of years ago, a couple of decades ago. So for me personally, I have always thought I was an anxious person, and I also deemed myself brave enough to actually get where I wanted to. But a lot of this anxiety I was experiencing was kind of preventing me from going to talk to people and making connections, and that created a lot of resentments towards myself. So I just thought that was part of my personality. Even in college, like I could speak in front of the class, but I would get like a massive stress reaction, like sweaty pits and sweaty palms and heart palpitations, going crazy. And then we went through a huge stressful period, like starting out on a business, didn't have any money, didn't have time to eat, not time, money to eat, didn't eat nutrient dense foods, fasted a lot. And that really catapulted anxiety and all kinds of mood issues like crazy. And so this was where I couldn't even make eye contact. I couldn't have normal conversation. My voice was like tremoring, right? I felt extremely self-conscious. Everything felt like a confrontation. Everything felt dangerous because your body, it perceives the environment as dangerous because it doesn't have that kind of energy. And started fixing everything, focusing on the stuff that we're going to talk about, diet and whatnot, and completely get rid of it, right? So people don't even recognize me how I am now. Like I'm totally comfortable with my own skin, comfortable by being weird and being yourself, having no anxiety. Now, obviously, I still have anticipation anxiety. Going to go to the dentist, you're not going to feel very well, for example, or stuff happens. Getting a stress response is normal, but you want to get a slight stress response, go back to baseline fast. Your recovery is good, right? That is normal. You want to be responsive to things. You don't want to be anhedonic. What you don't want is a massive stress response that stays elevated for a long time, and then you go and ruminate on the stuff that happened for like a week afterwards. That's not what we want.
I was sort of diagnosed with anxiety and depression when I was in my late teens, I guess, like 17 or 18. And so then I was put on SSRIs at quite a young age. And like at that time, I didn't know I never did any research into any of this stuff or never looked into anything. So you go to the doctor and you go, okay, sure, if I feel better, then I'll take these. And I felt much worse when I started taking the SSRIs. You go back to the doctor, they'd go, hey, this one's not working. Hey, how about you try this one? So then you change to a different one. You still don't feel better. They go, well, maybe you should just increase your dose. And then you go through that kind of process. And it ended with me being on a ridiculously high dose of sertraline by the end of it. And it had huge impacts on my mood, and it changed my personality in a weird way. I became a very different person, and it was a very strange moment in my life. And so I did the opposite of what you're supposed to do, and I stopped it cold turkey. And then I struggled for 6 months to a year to try and recover my energy, and like I was taking like hundreds of milligrams of sertraline, like 200 or 300 milligrams, like the highest doses. And it took a long time to recover from it because, as we'll cover in more detail throughout the episode, SSRIs and things, they have a big knock-on impact on mitochondrial health, energy production, and all of these things. And so you really have to then dig yourself out of that hole that you found yourself in by taking these drugs. And I was lucky at that point that I began some research onto these sorts of things. And so I started incorporating, for the better or worse, herbs and things like saffron and various other compounds that I'd like read into. And then in my sort of mid to late 20s, I obviously got way more into this stuff, and I was like, hey, maybe I should think about dopamine rather than serotonin a little bit more, and maybe I should do all these other things. And so for me, a big part of that recovery was working on energy production, managing my sleep better, managing my stress better, and all of these sorts of things. And I used to have panic attacks all the time when I was younger, and I don't have them anymore. And that's such a relief, like to not have to worry about, like I'd go out for dinner or to the cinema and I'd be like, we have to leave. And it's like, why? I'm like, I'm having a panic attack. And there was no external force on that whatsoever. It was completely internal, internally driven. But it's life ruining for people. And the SSRIs, what they ironed out things like panic attacks, but what they also do is iron out things like, the things you enjoy in life and the things that excite you and motivate you as well. There's a general flattening, which in extreme cases can actually be really beneficial for people, obviously, if it's severe issues. I mean, obviously SSRIs and things, I don't want to say that they're good for everybody, because they're not. There's high risks of suicide in men and things like that with SSRIs. Like, these things are real. But they do help they can help to iron out these moments. So for certain people, they probably serve a purpose and have a use. But for me, it was much more a case of just getting organized with my nutrition, my sleep, my energy production. I was indoors a lot under unnatural lights, no sunlight. Fixing these things just had a huge impact on it for me. So I think I'm a good position to talk about it, because I did the SSRI route and it didn't help me. It sort of did strange things to my brain, I think, which took a while to recover from. So yeah.
I would say I'm lucky to have never used any drugs. I think maybe because I was, our household never kind of like believed in drugs. It was always like natural stuff. But then again, it's almost like back in the day where things like OCD, ADHD, anxiety was never like categorized. It was like, you're just weird, right? So
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
it's just my personality. And so that's why I kind of like never thought about addressing it. Right? I didn't think it was like abnormal. I just thought like, this is who I am. And like, I was like jealous of someone like Chris Hemsworth. Like, why is he so charismatic? Why is he so confident? I wish I could be like that. But
Yeah.
so I think this is quite a good journey, because like when we went through this stressful period and all of this issue started, the first things we really started doing when we made more money was to eat better foods. And this is when I started to realize like, oh, these foods make me feel better. These foods make me warmer. And when I'm warmer, I actually feel better. It's like, oh, these foods are more nutrient dense. And because like potatoes have a high amount of magnesium, red meat has a lot of zinc, they modulate the NMDA receptor, which is heavily involved in anxiety. They resensitize the GABA system, support your thyroid. And then you start to learn about like all of these other systems that's kind of like involved in anxiety actually. And so I would say that the first thing for me was just like making sure you're eating enough. You shouldn't be in a caloric deficit. You should be eating for warmth, and you should be eating nutrient dense foods. And then people go and, let's say a common mistake is to eat fruit or drink milk or drink fruit juice in the mornings, or even drink just coffee. No protein, nothing that makes you feel warmer. You burn through those calories really fast. You get really cold. You get blood sugar fluctuations, and your anxiety just stays awful. And the thing is, like, you have to start the morning strong, because if you start the morning with anxiety attacks or you're feeling cold, you never get the temperature up. It might take you until the evening before you actually start to feel normal, right? People only start to feel better like at 3, 4, 5 p.m., but you can actually fast track that recovery by eating warming foods early in the day.
Right where they're supposed to be cooling down, right? And then it feeds into that, but it feeds into the cycle then, doesn't it? That's the issue. I think one of the big fundamental issues with anxiety and depression in these types of situations is it's really self-fueling. It burns the furnace even harder, promoting it even more, and it's very difficult to break out of because of that. When things like serotonin and melatonin and dopamine are dysregulated, your sleep becomes worse, and as your sleep becomes worse, your circadian rhythm becomes worse, your energy production becomes worse, and so it spirals out of control very quickly, I think, and then it becomes really difficult to break that. When people lose motivation due to stress, anxiety, and things like that, which is often the case, because you feel when you're in an anxious state, you don't feel like taking on challenges so much, and you feel those sorts of things feel quite difficult. And so you don't necessarily make the best choices around food. You don't make the best choices around your environment for sleep and things like that. If you struggle to sleep, so you think you'll watch a movie while you go to sleep, and it's that further dysregulates things. You're struggling with energy, so you binge on things or eat too much of things that are very fast energy, and then you crash. And so these things feed in. I think there's so much of it is trying to just break the cycle in certain ways that then support all the other areas as well. And I think, as Hans said, that the diet is really important, and consistency with nutrition. So making sure that you're eating well every day. I definitely felt like when I was in those moments, I would have days where I'd eat very little, and then that feeds into it further, and then maybe days where I'd eat more. But definitely having a consistent calorie intake, which is like maintenance or above, is really beneficial. Low calories and fasting and things like that, they just can feed into the kind of cortisol side of things, and the adrenaline side of things, which can obviously further push for anxiety. So the things I changed to support mine were definitely things like I used to intermittent fast. I stopped that, and that definitely had a positive effect on my mood. And anything nutrition related which feeds into the stress situation rather than taking away from it. I think a lot of people think of when they're trying to get in shape or whatever, they do all these things to try and help it, but lots of these things are additional stresses. That, things like going on ultra low carbohydrate diet that's an additional stress. Fasting, that's an additional stress. And obviously not providing your body with sufficient nutrients then that stress becomes even larger. So I think definitely nutrition first, making sure you're having your carbohydrates, making sure you're having your fats, your proteins consistently throughout the day is a really good place to start for this type of thing.
Yeah, you mentioned something like I think a lot of people think it's just like willpower, right? They need to do exposure therapy. They need to be out there and like accepting new challenges. It's like, okay, I'm gonna rework my whole life. I'm gonna join a CrossFit gym. I'm gonna start like ketogenic diet. I'm just gonna go ape shit. I'm gonna start running at 5 p.m. Do like all kinds of crazy shit, and like that is not what's gonna fix it. Like it's a good mentality to have, but that can backfire and make you feel worse. Like what got you there in the first place? It's basically not eating enough, crash dieting, overtraining. That's for a lot of people in a lot of cases though. So you don't want to be making that worse. Your body can only adapt to a stress so much, and you have this buffer. I call it the buffer effect. And then once you deplete your buffer by as much stress, because you don't repeat your buffer, now stress is exacerbated, right? And now any kind of stress, even like a workout, is seen as a stress, not as a positive adaptation. So that's just making things worse if you don't have that buffer.
No, exactly. So I think, for a little bit of extra info about like me when I was 17 or 18, 16, 17, when I was first put on SSRIs, there was clear things that they could have looked at first, right? And I think this is what a lot of people need to consider before taking any medications or drugs potentially, is to look at other factors first. So I was underweight. I was an endurance cyclist, so I was doing 10, 12, 15 hours of training a week, like hard endurance training. Like I said, I was underweight. I weighed 60 kilos as a 6 foot, and I was 6 foot tall. So I was very underweight, and my body fat levels were non-existent. With the amount of exercise I was doing, obviously that was enhancing the stress drastically, and my nutrition was not appropriate for the exercise that I was doing. I didn't have the knowledge of nutrition that I have now. So this was in the days of endurance training where it was like carbs, right? My protein intake wasn't great, my fat intake wasn't great or anything like that. So I would have been heavily missing out on fat soluble vitamins. If I'd just done some basic blood tests, they wouldn't have needed to give me antidepressants at that point, because they would have just seen like all these missing links in the process of creating energy for the body. And then also I was consuming high amounts of caffeine as well, like very high amounts of caffeine, because I was racing and training a lot. I was taking, we'd have I put caffeine tablets under my tongue before races and things like this. So we were consuming a lot of large amounts of caffeine as well, which they can add to the kind of anxiety side of things, and they definitely don't help if people are naturally kind of a little anxious. Taking like having like five or six coffees a day is not going to help. So I think if you look at things like your caffeine intake as well, it's there's lots of correlations between anxiety and depression and stress and things like sleep, caffeine intake, energy intake, nutrient intake, and all of these things.
Yeah, so like you bring up that, I think it's important, the differentiation that we should make, or like something people should be aware of, is that oftentimes you're doing something that is causing stress physically to the body. You have like neck tension, jaw tension, and then you interpret that as anxiety, which is what I started to get from drinking too much coffee when I was on my route of recovering. And like mentally, I was like, why do I feel this way? Like, I'm not stressed. I'm not in a dangerous situation. Like, I'm with my friends, but I'm feeling like, just this tenseness,
Yeah.
right? And then you realize, like, oh yeah, like I didn't eat enough. I am drinking all of this coffee. I'm undernourished. I'm feeling cold. So yeah, you're like in a dopaminergic, hyperstimulated mood, but you're also like anxious
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
interpret like
And
the physical for the emotional.
yeah, I still get that. I get that to this day, where I'm like, I find myself in that position. I'm like, when was the last time you actually took a deep breath? When was the last time you actually, actually, try to physically relax yourself? And people don't do it. Um, Obviously, when I was doing all that training as a kid, I had no thoughts on things like nasal breathing or mouth breathing or anything like that as well. And just while I'm talking about breath, that is how we breathe. Every breath makes a huge difference to how we feel every single day. We breathe thousands of times a day, and every single one of those will impact our our system in one way or another. And so if people are high stressed, breathing through the mouth constantly, not taking breaths through the nose, taking shallow breaths, these sorts of things, it adds to anxiety. It adds fuel to this fire. And so just really simple things like taking a few minutes out and just focusing on your breathing for a few minutes can have a noticeable impact on your stress levels, your blood glucose level, like loads of things, just by having a moment to try and relax and refresh in that sense.
Yeah. So one more thing before we get back onto diet is this thing about sometimes something will happen to you, and it will stress you out, and then you become stressed and you forgot what stressed you out. You're just feeling stressed. So very importantly is to just start to take a deep breath, as you mentioned, like 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out, like just start to calm yourself and then think about, okay, what triggered me? And then it's like, oh, right, I got this negative comment online. And it's like, and then you can mentally process, like, yeah, that guy's a retard, who cares? And then it's like,
Yeah. I was
ah,
I was stuck in traffic 4 hours ago, and my body is still stressed because of the thing that happened 4 hours ago. And you're like, oh, that doesn't actually matter, does it? I can let that go. Do you know what I mean? I do think it's a case of letting things go in that sense.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to go too far into that because I think the breathing side is something we can touch on in more detail later. But it was just to feed into like the environment that I was in at that point in my life, causing this increased anxiety, and there was so many factors feeding into it that simply taking something that increases serotonin in the synapses isn't going to necessarily cure the 10,000 things that were contributing towards my stress, right?
yeah,
It didn't help with any of those things.
yeah,
And if anything, it just supported further mitochondrial dysfunction, and that is not a good look, right?
yeah.
So, but yeah, diet wise, Han, what would you say your biggest points? I think the warmth side of nutrition is really interesting. I think a lot of people don't think about that very much. How food can have that impact on you.
Exactly. Because like I realized that every time I felt warm, I feel good. When the sun came out and you got some sunlight, you feel good. And yes, it's obviously like the UV, you're creating dopamine, those kind of stuff, but it's warm. When I'm driving to the shop to buy some groceries, I was like anxious, got in the car, started driving, and now the sun is like shining on the car. It's creating a little bit of a sauna effect, starting to feel warmer and warmer. It's like you start to feel better and better. You get to the shop, you're actually in a good mood because now you're feeling warmer. And so you start making this
Yeah.
correlation between food, salt. Okay, fruit juice is not as good because it doesn't contain salt. It's liquid. It's burned too fast. There was actually a case where this is when I was just like new to Rapid, and we were too broke to really buy fruit at that time. And then I decided to buy like a bag of oranges, make my own orange juice because he was obviously like hectic about orange juice. I juiced myself some oranges, drank 1 cup of orange juice. I started to get like crazy heart palpitations, hypoglycemia. I was feeling like awful. So the kind of carbohydrate also matters, right? So when I drink like apple juice or grape juice back then, I was fine. So it like people
Mhm.
love to say like carbs are bad for you. It's like, okay, but what carb? Are you referring to gluten?
Yeah.
Are you referring to resistant starches? Are you referring to high FODMAP foods? Like what are you referring to? You know, you should be
Yeah.
experimenting to find what works best for you.
Yeah, yeah. I think the one of the things I really like to do for the warmth side of things is the ginger, right? So ginger is fantastic for warming the body, and so I have like we've got the ginger ales, right?
Yeah.
And I'll have one of those first thing in the morning, and it definitely lifts your mood and it lifts your energy for the day, you know, a really good amount. And I think that's it's a real noticeable difference in warming up the body in that moment and how you feel energy wise and how your body then processes energy for the rest of the day. It does so more willingly rather than restricting it, you know.
Yeah. So for warmth as well, side note on that. Yes, last night I had a huge pizza, not a huge, a medium sized one. Because like funny enough, since I'm using the IGF-1 and like a couple of other stuff, my weight's actually not going up. I'm drinking like half a gallon of like full fat goat milk, and I'm chucking an additional glucose powder, and I'm eating like basically whatever the hell I want. I'm not freaking gaining weight, so I don't know what's going on, but I see that as a good thing. So I was like, man, I'm gonna have a pizza. And
Yeah.
I started making some ginger ale again because of the digestive benefits that you get from the ginger ale. And usually I would eat a pizza back in the day. I would eat a pizza. I would feel full for like 4 6 hours, like for a very long time. You feel very stuffed. You get extremely thirsty. So I ate the pizza. I drank like half a cup of ginger ale that I made. Like within an hour or so, like I was feeling like I barely ate. Like I was satiated, but I wasn't feeling full.
I'm
Like I
near
could
there.
feel the digestive power, bro. It was insane. It's awesome.
Yeah. It works really well for that. It definitely, yeah. I mean, I never feel like full or bloated if I'm having the ginger ale every day. I think if your if your goal was to try and lose weight, then it might be. I don't think it would be counterproductive because I think you still feel full and feel better. You just don't feel heavy from your food. You don't feel
Yeah.
like you don't get the energy crash like you would do if you're really struggling to digest. I think.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then also for heat, the other things that I really like is thyroid, but the caveat is that you need to dose it very frequently. So people's like, okay, how much should I take? And take it all in the morning, boom, and then they feel awful because like thyroid is a stimulant, right? You can always almost like compare it to caffeine in a way. Like if you overdose, you're gonna feel quite jittery, and then like all of the
Mhm.
T3 is gonna work out of your system, and you're gonna crash. So you have to microdose it, like let's say 3 to 7 micrograms of T3 every 2 hours. That's kind of like the right way to do it. Then you keep it like really stable throughout the day. And you dose it like let's say 5 times. So it's over the time period of like 10 hours. So you keep it stable, you lose no muscle because T3 can actually become really catabolic, like if you dose it wrong. So if you microdose it throughout the day, you keep all of your muscle, you lose all of the fat. It primarily oxidizes the fat, and that helps to keep you warm. And then you combine that with aspirin. So aspirin is great for lowering inflammation, which increases cortisol. It lowers cortisol, and it enhances the transport of T3 into the cell where you want it. So it's useless in the blood. You need it in the cell, right? So like most people, when they start taking aspirin, they will feel a lot warmer. So you combine the T3 with aspirin, you're going to be feeling highly dopaminergic and warm and just like anti-stress, right? But you got to eat as well because if you don't eat enough calories while you're doing that, it's also going to backfire. So for me, like
Yeah.
back in the day, I was eating a lot of potatoes, which was actually like allergenic for me, which I solved. But lots of potatoes and salt and meat, so it's like slow digesting, starches, really good for restoring glycogen stores. And then with like aspirin and caffeine, not caffeine, T3, and that worked like extremely
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts on, supplementing with T3 if you already have like relatively high thyroid output? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I would say
Do
you
you think
don't need
someone,
it.
do you think, yeah, do you think someone should, they should check their thyroid output before supplementing with T3? Yeah.
I would rather just go by symptoms first, because like you can have normal thyroid output in the bloods, but if your tissue
Yeah.
is not getting it right, so let's say someone's T3 in the blood is normal, but they still feel cold and those kind of stuff, I would rather focus on something like aspirin. So you need to get
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
thyroid into a cell instead of providing more T3.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was, I was reading up on Bacopa as well. I think that helps to get thyroid through into the cells as well. So, it's a pro energy one, isn't it?
So basically, from my research, is the Bacopa is really good at increasing T4, and then
Hmm.
combining that with goggosterone increases the conversion into T3, which is why I usually recommend that. I don't know if it's really good at increasing tissue uptake, but butyrate is also like really important for enhancing the sensitivity to T3 receptor.
Butyrate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been doing quite a bit of reading on butyrate at the moment. It's an interesting thing, isn't it? I think it's quite an exciting area to look down. Is that kind of area, right?
Yeah, like yeah, the thing is like I actually just ordered another big batch of Kestos, and so I'm
Yeah,
going to be relatively megadosing Kestos because it helps to increase that F. Prausnitzi bacteria that's really good at increasing butyrate. And then I want to combine that with Clostridium butyricum, which is a great butyrate producer. So I want to be doing those two so that you constantly have butyrate in the system, not just via like an acute supplement spike.
yeah. Just quickly while we're on the gut, because I just wanted to drop this in there, but I've had some good progress with the cholesterol side of things, and I went down a completely different route, and I'm actually using Lactobacillus plantarum and Disogenin, right? So I mean, just quickly while we're talking about gut, but the Lactobacillus plantarum, it downregulates a receptor MPC1L1 in the intestine and also increases bile salt hydroxylase. And in human trials, in 6-week human trials, it reduced cholesterol LDL by 37.6%. So that's something it's a really interesting mechanism, and I'm seeing really good progress with that so far. And Disogenin, so Disogenin is high in things like wild yam and various other, and fenugreek, for example. But Disogenin also downregulates NPC1L1, so it basically reduces the reuptake of cholesterol that's trying to be excreted, essentially. So if you have an upregulation of NPC1L1, then you basically you're recollecting cholesterol continuously that your body is trying to excrete. So it basically means if you don't have a production problem, you just have an excessive reuptake. And so I'm seeing really good progress so far with those. I'm going to do a full cholesterol panel on that in the next week, but just an interesting one on the gut there for those.
Diogenin from Nootropics Depot. Have you ever tried that one?
No, I've got so at the moment I've got a wild yam extract, which is 20% disogenin, which I've been using that for that. So yeah,
They have a one called Dioscoria that I've used containing 40% protodiosine, but it's actually
okay,
like it's in the same family as the Diogenin that you're speaking about.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
for
yeah.
me, that was one of my experiments to see if it increases DHT, and it made me feel like a workhorse. Like I could just like work, not mentally get tired. Like I really like that supplement as like a stamina kind of supplement. So maybe you can try that one and see how it affects your lipids. I don't think I tested lipids back then when I used it though.
No, I mean I think that the main one I'm interested in is the probiotics for it, because there's just some really good studies on that already. So basically, in the particular study, there's a particular type of plantarum that they used, and it reduces cholesterol dependently on how high cholesterol. If it's excessively elevated, then it brings it down by a large percent. If it's slightly elevated, it brings it down by a smaller percent. And if it's not elevated, it doesn't really move it. So that's it's not. The interesting thing for me about this is I've never been worried about the cholesterol. I've just been interested as why it's so high. And um, and obviously, if you're just reabsorbing the cholesterol that's excreted, then that makes a whole lot of sense, right? And with people that's base levels are over a total of 6, it reduced by 37.6% in 6 weeks. So that's pretty hefty, isn't it? That's a big reduction.
Yeah, that's very
It's
important
interesting.
what you mentioned, because a lot of people might be saying like, "Oh, cholesterol is so important, you shouldn't be lowering." It's like, no, these compounds doesn't lower it past where it should be. It just kind of like normalizes it.
No, and it doesn't lower production of it. I think
Yeah,
that's a key point, isn't it? It's not you don't want to lower cholesterol production. You just want to have cholesterol within a sensible range. That's all.
yeah, yeah,
So I think it's,
yeah,
it's an
exactly.
interesting
All
it's
right,
an
so
interesting concept, that, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So we talked about diet, heating
Yeah.
up, thyroid, aspirin, those kind of good stuff. So now the next one, so that is level one. Level one is just you got to eat, and you got to eat good food that's going to make you feel warm and provide a lot of nutrients. Level two is to reduce inflammation, right? So any kind of inflammation, it could be heavy metals. Most oftentimes it's just gut related. So people have poor digestion. When you have anxiety, you're already more stressed, and when you're more stressed, your digestion is not as good, right? So fixing digestion first. A very simple one is just to use ginger. Right? It's a very cheap thing you can use. It enhances stomach acid secretion, digestive enzyme secretion. It prevents the excessive fermentation of undigested food in the intestines, which then creates endotoxin. So that is like step one. You can always use digestive enzymes as well if your digestion is like really short, which some people's digestion is. And then making sure you don't have diarrhea or too fast transit time or constipation. Because if you have constipation, there's more time for bacteria to ferment, create endotoxin, which is going to inflame the body. And anything that creates inflammation is going to hypersensitize the sympathetic nervous system. So this is oftentimes why people, when they have more inflammation, and like I've had so many people tell me this, like I did not realize how food made me anxious, or like specific things that made me more, it was causing inflammation that made me anxious. Until they eliminated it, anxiety went away, right? So that
Yeah.
this could be like high FODMAP foods. It could be like chili sensitivity, nightshades, gluten, for example, like autoimmune conditions. Just eliminate anything that causes inflammation for you. And as you improve your health, that sensitivities can actually go away. So this is not necessarily a long-term thing. It's just like something you need to do right now.
No. One of the things that the periods of high stress and things impacted me in a major way was um, like mast cells and histamine intolerance. And high levels of stress deplete DAO, which is the enzyme that breaks down histamine. And so when you're going through periods of high stress, your ability to break down or remove histamine decreases. And there's another spiral here where it further degrades the gut lining if levels are elevated, and then that further degradation reduces DOA even further. And so I think a lot of people, if they are going through periods of very high stress or they are suffering from anxiety, then having a low histamine diet for that period of time, I think, would be a very sensible approach to beginning the process of healing the gut that's likely been damaged by periods of stress and anxiety. And so for me, reducing histamine foods, it just gives your body a chance to begin that recovery, especially if then during that period of time you're also supporting the body with things like zinc L-carnosine or glutamine or the latrazode acetate. That's those sorts of compounds which are really amazing at fixing the gut. But if they're trying to do that under a period where it's still under heavy stress from histamine or from LPA or whatever it is, then they're gonna struggle to do their work. So a low histamine diet during that period, I think, would be really beneficial for reducing the impact that poor digestion, poor gut health has on stress and anxiety.
Histamine is a very undercover culprit for a lot of health issues, right?
Yeah.
Like I think it messes with your lipids, blood sugar. I think it's a big cause for skin issues, not just like rash, but acne because it causes inflammation. It's a big cause for hair loss because it causes scalp itchiness, and you need like scratching and like starting losing your hair. Like sleeping issues, mental disorders, diarrhea, too fast transit time. Histamine is a very even if it's mild, because like you don't always get the typical high histamine symptoms. And I think
Yeah.
like I've become more and more aware that I think for a long time I've had low grade elevated histamine because I've never like had allergies or sensitivities to things. But like if I eat like nightshade, I will get like certain issues. I tended to have a lot of like bacne and nasal congestion, which is now basically completely solved, even if I eat nightshade or whatever. So that got better. But I think for a long time I overlooked high histamine.
Yeah. So histamine is something that I've been doing a lot of work on for myself for the last period of time. Um, when I did my investigation into my genes, histamine was something that was flagged in there, and I was already aware of it before that. Um, but some of the interesting, histamine in excess also reduces Leydig cell function as well. So like high levels of histamine will lower testosterone. You need a certain amount of histamine. Like if your level of histamine is 0, then your testosterone will be reduced. But also if your level of histamine is elevated, then it does directly reduce Leydig cell function. So that is something that's really interesting. Histamine increases prolactin through various mechanisms, stress related mechanisms, and so for me, I started taking DAO to break down histamine, and my prolactin went down significantly. Right?
Interesting.
Like that, it makes a lot of sense because it's sort of stress related and things like that. And another thing with histamine as well, when we talk about histamine for hair, for hair loss, and histamine for skin health, and histamine for anxiety and depression and things like that as well. You imagine that when your body is producing excessive amounts of histamine, it is burning through the cofactors and the ingredients required to make histamine, and so that and also you're then also getting the higher levels of the negative byproducts of histamine as well. So you're burning through like histidine, like as obviously as an amino acid that's a precursor to histamine. You're also getting higher levels of, I think it's hydrogen peroxide is you get high levels of hydrogen peroxide through that process as well, right?
Yeah, I think yeah, like a free radical, yeah.
Yeah, and so with that you've got a reduction in certain amino acids, you've got a reduction in certain cofactors required to create that, and obviously a general reduction in DAO. So one of the interesting things also looking at some of this is, so like higher testosterone levels, they increase DAO levels, whereas high estrogen levels decrease DAO levels. So again, if your body fat level's a little high, if your aromatase a little high, estrogen's a little high, then you're going to struggle with histamine more than if you've got a good level of testosterone and you're not sensitive to estrogen in that sense. So I definitely think that the histamine side is not just for, not just for anxiety, but it does play a part. But for general health, I think histamine is overlooked. For me, if my histamine levels are high, I can't sleep. Histamine it's a very potent stimulant in the brain, right? And so if I have it where I'll go for dinner and have all my favorite things are high in histamine, right? Every single one of my favorite things is high in histamine. So I'll go for dinner and I'll have an aged, have a nice dry aged steak. But anything aged is high in histamine, right? When the steak's breaking down, the histamine is released in there. Aged cheese is a high histamine. Cured meats are high histamine. Red wine is very high histamine. All my favorite things, right? So I'll go out for dinner. I'll have a steak, some cheese, some red wine, and I won't fall asleep until 4 in the morning, right? And I'll also have an upset stomach in the following day as well. But if I take DAO with that, then I can negate a large amount of those issues. And I used to take antihistamines, right? So, this is years ago. I used to struggle to fall asleep unless I took antihistamines. And the issue, so obviously the way it was working for me there was that you block the receptors of histamine in the brain, and so your brain can relax, right? And I mean, there's more to it than that, but elevated histamine reduces melatonin production and so on, in all these other things, right? So you block the receptors, and therefore you can relax and fall asleep. But your histamine levels are building up. You're not removing histamine. In fact, by taking antihistamines, you're upregulating the production of histamine because it's not
Yeah.
able to do its job. And so then you stop taking the antihistamines, and then you're like, oh my God, I feel terrible. You got a bad stomach, blah, blah. You have all of these issues. So then you have to take more antihistamines. Yeah. So I was talking to my dad the other day, and my dad, he must have the same gene thing as me, because he was like, yeah, I take antihistamines every day. I take them every day before bed to fall asleep. And I was like, oh man. I was like, hey, and I had some DAO. I was like, just try this instead. Hopefully he will. But so the thing with this is that if you are not actually either lowering histamine production or intake, or actually enhancing its breakdown, then your levels of histamine will build up regardless of whether you're taking antihistamines or not. And so you're going to have to face that problem at some point or another.
Yeah. Maybe this is TMI, but have you noticed your flaccid hang is better when you take an antihistamine?
Yeah, absolutely. It is, yeah. I mean, so it's funny you mentioned that. So for a period of time, I was taking cyperhepridine, right, which is a potent blocks the histamine receptors and also blocks serotonin receptors as well. And flaccid hang was definitely more when taking that. I don't actually I don't take cyperheptadine anymore, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because I think that it has has sort of potent side effects of heavy drowsiness. And I know you can break through that, but it's not addressing the underlying issues of you know high
Yeah.
serotonin at night, high histamine at night. It's not addressing those. It's a band-aid that you're gonna have to rip off, right?
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
by enhancing the breakdown and reduction of histamine, and also the correct conversion of serotonin through to melatonin at night, by doing those two things you can solve the same problem and do so in a way that's actually healthy and productive. So but yeah, lowering histamine definitely has that effect, which is it's a nice effect of a little DAO capture once in a while.
Yeah, like I don't actually want to buy some cyperheptadine again because I feel like it's an amazing compound just to have in emergencies. Like sometimes, I don't know, shit happens, you have some cyperheptadine at hand. But I also have ketotifen, which is a very powerful histamine antagonist as well, and it stabilizes the mast cells. So it has like this dual antihistamine effect. Now,
Yeah.
the problem is if you overdose it, it completely like removes your motivation and drive. You feel very flat. So histamine is important for motivation and drive and mood and like libido, like all of those good stuff. You need that as you mentioned, but like too much, it can be atrocious. It's better to modulate the system in a beneficial way that the system automatically regulates itself.
Exactly. So you're absolutely right with histamine there. So, histamine is really important for even things like vasodilation and things like that, right? So if you lower your histamine levels excessively, then there are sort of repercussions to that. And if you lower your brain sensitivity to it by blocking all the receptors, it will impact things like vasodilation and things as well. For me, so for example, like the ginger ale recipe that we've been having, that obviously it's a fermented drink. It's very high histamine, right? It's naturally anything fermented is high histamine. So just being selective with the probiotics you use can be really beneficial. So one of the things that I discovered whilst going through this process with the ginger ale was I was experimenting with two different types of L-Reuteri. So I had the kind of classic, I think, is the LR08, which is the kind of standard Rutary that if you buy in bulk, like cheap, that's what you get. That's very high histamine. It promotes histamine, whereas there's other strains of Rutary that don't have that effect on histamine. And there's obviously probiotics that you can take that actually help to, reduce the impact of histamine as well. So by using using probiotics that do not increase histamine, you can sort of reduce that effect to a degree. And also the timing of it is important as well. So utilizing histamine pre-workout, for example, for energy, for motivation, for vasodilation, fantastic. So, if you're going to have something like that, like a fermented, drink or something that's high histamine, you can utilize it as a stimulant. The last thing I'm going to do is have that before bed. If I have that before bed, I'm going to be itching and scratching, and my brain's going to be wired, and I'm not going to be able to sleep. Right. So I definitely think that with all of this stuff, there's so much of it's about timing as well, right? So much of it's about timing too, and people overlook timing. But for example, do you want to take your DAO before training when when histamine has benefits, or do you want to take DAO with your evening meal when you're looking to relax and unwind? The same goes for lots of these things, and I think it all falls into the circadian rhythm and the natural swings of the body, which are also so important for energy production and anxiety, depression as well.
Since we're on the histamine topic, like last time, like one of our previous episodes, you mentioned that you are taking PEA pre-workout, and that's a great tool to enhance the workout capacity. And since then, I've been doing it, and I realized that every time I work out, and so, okay, let me backtrack a little bit. About 2 years ago, I used Masteron the first time, and I think this was beginning of summer. I felt extremely itchy from Masteron. Like I went into the summer, you get this histamine flush, you're just freaking itchy all over, you're just scratching like a freaking maniac. And I think that is a big reason why androgens, especially the DHT metabolites, actually contribute to hair loss. It's not the DHT, it's that for some reason, your immune system is very histamine prone, and that causes the hair loss. It's highly inflammatory. And anyway, any kind of stress, especially like a heat stress for me, exercise and whatnot, would make me more itchy, especially on my scalp. The PEA almost completely blunts that. So I'm going to be writing an article on PEA soon, but it's kind of like what I wrote about my augmentin article. It's when you go through a stressor, your body secretes things like PEA, augmentin, IGF-1, testosterone to adapt to the stressor. Now, if you can't adapt because it's not secreting those things, you're going to get negative adaptations. You're going to get hair loss. You're going to get poor sleep because your body doesn't have those buffer compounds like augmentin, PEA, whatever else it needs, vitamins, minerals, to actually make sure the stressor is hormetic. Right? Like some people, they can sit in an ice bath for 10 minutes, they don't feel stressed. Another person is looking at an ice bath, they're becoming stressed. Right? It's that buffer that determines when a stress becomes a stress and when it's hormetic or not.
Yeah, 100%. So on the histamine topic and the P topic as well, PEA. I mean, firstly, PEA pre-workout is great, isn't it? Like you find extra reps, right? You definitely find extra reps. It does help, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a nice underrated secret weapon for training performance. So I think the mechanism for it is fairly simple, really. I don't think it's anything to do with it upregulating 5-alpha reductase or anything like that. I think it's just that training performance is restricted by perceived exertion, right? So how, when you stop lifting a weight, it's because your brain has decided that that's enough. It's not to do with the muscles, right? It's not to do. Okay, so we know that DHEA and DHT contribute towards like motor unit recruitment of high threshold, like power, like fast twitch muscle fibers. We know that, but the off switch is your ability to tolerate the pain of that set, right? Yeah. And so PEA mechanistically is it works on the receptors for lowering or increasing your threshold for pain. So it just makes it makes a 9 out of 10 feel like a 6 out of 10 so that you can push for an extra rep or two. I think it's as simple as that, but it's a really nice mechanism. And also it doesn't show the same negative, so like if someone takes like painkillers before training, it blunts some of the adaptive responses of exercise, whereas from what I've read, supplementing with PEA doesn't contribute, or it doesn't diminish exercise
Yeah.
recovery benefits or performance
Yeah.
improvements after exercise. So I think it's a really exciting thing to take pre-training. I think it's a really good option.
That's very interesting what you bring up, because like when you're young, for example, you release an adequate amount of inflammation during training to cause the adaptation. So using an NSAID, for example, is gonna to an extent blunt that adaptation. Now, older individuals, they actually create excessive inflammation due to a stimulus. In that case, using aspirin is actually anabolic, because inflammation is catabolic, right? So if you blunt the excessive amount of inflammation, you become more anabolic at the same time. So my hypothesis to these compounds like augmentin and PEA, and it's the same thing about the plantarum, is that they help to buffer the stress. They don't like crush. Like an analogy would be, for example, SSRIs, right? They indiscriminately increase serotonin in all areas of the brain if you need it or not, right? There's no discrimination between
Yeah.
anything. It's just like, boom, there you go, there's serotonin. And that's not good. So the same thing is like, you need a little bit of inflammation. PEA is not going to blunt that past normal. You're going to have that optimal amount still, but you're not going to have too much where it becomes catabolic. So the adaptation that you're going to get is actually going to be optimal.
Yeah, because I remember a few years ago there was a study on vitamin E and vitamin C on it reducing improvements from exercise. I'm going to have to reread that and check like the age of people that went through the trial, and things like that, because I think, I don't know what dosage they were using or anything like that, but that was an interesting one, that like using antioxidants during training would take away from some of the benefits of training.
Have you ever listened to the podcast Stronger by Science?
Yeah, not for a while, but I have done in the past. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think when I forgot what the guy's name was, Eric. I think he did basically a piece on vitamin C and vitamin E supplementation based on all of the data, and he basically concluded that the inhibition of hypertrophy is so small that it doesn't matter.
Sure. Yeah, it
You
makes
can
sense.
take it, you don't. Yeah, it just
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Like if you
Yeah.
look at, there was a study, and I haven't shared it yet, but I really want to. They compared berries and bananas to like glucose powder, and they found that berries, for the most part, eliminated the hyperinflammatory response due to an extreme or ultra endurance activity. Now, is that good or bad? In my opinion, that's good. Because like an excessive amount of inflammation is going to cause an excessive amount of catabolism, an excessive amount of recovery required, right? So foods, not even as a supplement, is preventing that excessive damage from the stressor. That's good.
Yeah, and also with the vitamin C one as well, I imagine they were mega dosing like ascorbic acid rather than it being a nice dose of a natural, a sensible dose of actual vitamin C. And high dose ascorbic acid has a very different effect on the body than 100 milligrams of like of vitamin C from a cherry extract or from citrus. Like it has a very different effect. So I think
Yeah.
if you're dealing with like way super physiological levels of intake of something like 5 grams of vitamin C, then of course you're going to have a very different outcome. Like I've got vitamin C, a vitamin C supplement, which I use occasionally if I feel like I haven't had enough like kiwis or citrus in my diet or something like that. But it's only 100 milligrams of vitamin C per thing. But it's from cherry extract, and you need large amounts, obviously, of this extract to get any decent amount. But its effects on the body are much better, and also it's a much more suitable dose as well.
Yeah. No, food always first.
Yeah.
So back to food though. I think we kind of addressed when it comes to anxiety. We talked about food, what to consume, what not to consume. So the next sections we're probably going to be talking about lifestyle and supplements and also hormones and neurotransmitters. So I wonder if we should make this like a two-part series. This one is primarily about diet and what to avoid. I think one last section that we can actually that I haven't addressed yet is what you can do when you have gut issues based on the food that you're having, and then we can do the part two about like all of the other stuff. All right,
Good idea.
so like let's say someone does have gut issues, they have bacterial overgrowth. Any food that they're basically eating is going to be problematic. So the first step is going to be make sure digestion is on point, make sure your transit time is on point, make sure your bile release is on point. Not be too much or too little. Everything needs to be balanced. And then the last one is like some binders that you can use to prevent the harms. It's going to bind to a lot of the toxins in the gut. That's going to inflame the nervous system. That's going to make you more anxious. So that would be, let's keep it cheap, right? My top three stack. Okay, one food is white button mushroom. That's always going to be
Yeah.
there. The
Yeah.
the other one might be carrot salad. So okay, let me sidetrack here for a moment. I think you would find this very interesting. I've been doing carrot salad for a while now. I really struggled like a maniac. Then I decided, okay, why was Pete into carrots, right? He said that there were some unique fibers. That is not true. There's no unique fibers to carrots, but there is a unique compound that is antibacterial, antifungal to carrots. But that compound is also found in other root vegetables like parsnip. So parsnip is actually 6 to 7 times higher in these specific compounds, antimicrobial compounds, than carrots. Now, parsnip doesn't taste as good as carrot. So my hypothesis is the reason why Pete recommended carrots was because carrots taste better than parsnip. So what I've been doing is I've been consuming parsnip. And so I'm going to be tasting in 3 days. So I've been having, instead of 3 carrots that I've having 3 parsnip. With sweet potato, it actually like muffles the taste quite a lot. You don't want to be cooking it because too much, because cooking destroys some of these compounds. So I've been pressure cooking it for 3 minutes. I might be getting about a 30% loss of these compounds, but that still puts me 4 to 5 times higher than carrots, right? So I've been using that, and I do feel like I'm getting quite interesting anti-inflammatory gut effects. Like I can be eating foods that's usually inflammatory to me, and it doesn't really inflame me that much. So that's interesting that I've noticed, and I'm going to be doing tests soon to see like how it's affecting my blood work. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say about that.
That's
Um,
yeah. I mean, that's really interesting. I did the carrot salad for a while, and I definitely liked it. I think the carrots themselves were actually a little bit of an irritant for me if I was eating a lot of them. So I'd be definitely interested to try parsnips because potentially then you could have a reduced dosage of it, right? You could
yeah.
consume less if it has more of these similar compounds. So that's a definite. The mushrooms is that's 100%. Doesn't eat them raw, eat them cooked, however you want to do it. Just get them down. I think that's a massive win for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is, like, if you want to envision what a parsnip tastes like, think about a carrot, but you put it on steroids and it tastes like 10 times more stronger. That's what it tastes
Yeah.
like.
I wonder, do you think like a raw grated parsnip would be the most effective thing? Do you think that would work well? Or do you think that by cooking it, you do help with the digestive side of things?
I would say so. I would say so
Yeah.
because I also felt like raw carrots was also a bit of irritating for me. But when I
Yeah.
do like a 50-50 split between parsnip and sweet potato, I cook it for like 3 minutes, just 3 minutes, soft enough to
Yeah.
mash. Like you get the benefits of the compounds. It's not gut irritating and it's anti-inflammatory.
Nice. I'm gonna have to give that a go for sure. And so you got mushrooms, you got parsnips. What else is going to make your list?
All right. The other ones that I really, really like is Interos gel combined with modified citrus pectin. So if it's two supplements, it's those with those two foods, and that will make the world of a difference. If you really want to add something else, because this will be like the cherry on the cake, is lactoferrin, but it needs to be a good brand. There's a company from I think lactoferrin.co, really good, and the other one is Doublewood. Those are the two companies that I trust for like high quality stuff.
Yeah. So I agree on all of that. I'm going to add just one thing into the mix. So I was using various binders. I was using the charcoal. I was using the modified citrus pectin, and I went back to, and I've gone back to apple pectin. And the apple pectin for me is a fantastic binder. And so I think it's a very cheap and easy option as well. There's other potential benefits to the apple pectin as well. There's some unique benefits to it. I'll probably talk more about that in another time because I think there's a whole load to cover on that. But for one example, so the apple pectin lowers intestinal FXR, which is obviously to do with bile acid production and things like that. So, there's things with elevated bile production or dysregulation in bile, in bile acids, too much of some, too little of others. I think it's a huge topic I don't want to get into, but I have been looking at a few things for lowering intestinal FXR. Apopectin does that effectively, and after 3 or 4 days with apopectin, my digestion is improved beyond even using the modified citrus pectin and things like that. So I do think that there's some specific benefits in there for me, but it's ultimately it's a cheap and easy option as a binder, and I think one that's very effective.
That's fascinating because, like, okay, just a quick caveat. You have very fast transit time. When you used activated
Yeah,
charcoal, it was like 4 hours out of your system. So
yeah,
an excessive amount of bile stimulates transit time too much, and this is why the FXR pathway makes a lot of sense to you. So that's the background. I think that's
yeah.
fascinating because me and you, we basically struggle a little
With the
bit with the same issue where I'm also
yeah
more prone to loose stool and fast transit time. So I
on
haven't
that, yeah.
tried the apopectin yet. I actually have some. How do
Mhm.
you consume it? Because it's very sticky.
So I actually bought in. So the reason I got it. So I bought capsules for the apple pectin, right? So I have to take quite a few capsules. I have a pot of the modified citrus pectin, and so you scoop that mix, and it just does not mix with water well. It's so sticky, isn't it? It's so heavy. So what I was actually do I actually when I was taking the modified, it was a pain, but when I was taking the modified citrus pectin, I would I just I've got like a big sack of gelatin capsules in my, because and I was like making my own capsules with it because it was so difficult to consume otherwise. I think if I had powdered apple pectin and I wanted to test it, then I'd put it in a I'd put it in my NutriBullet, and like in my blender, and I would blend it with some water so that so it mixes it well. But the capsules works great as well. You just need to, with all the with any binders that you're taking, you just need to make sure you're well hydrated prior to consuming them. Otherwise, you will wake up in the night feeling like you've maybe been on a bender and drank loads of booze, and you got the sweats. Um, but another reason for the binders as well is, so obviously, you know, with binders, you're looking at removing things from your intestines that you don't want to be there, right? So things that get stuck, things that get reabsorbed, things that your body's trying to excrete but struggling to excrete. And so we can look at things like cholesterol in this, we can look at things like estrogen, we can look at things like histamine as well. And lots of these compounds, and also heavy metals and things like this, and lots of these compounds are associated with stress and anxiety as well. So, for example, if as a man if you're more estrogen dominant or more prone to having high estrogen levels, this can be problematic from a mood, motivation, energy, confidence standpoint, right? That's one example. And estrogen is heavily reabsorbed in the gut, in the digestive tract. Histamine we've talked about. I said to Hans the other day that I often have a sauna after training, and so the heat from a sauna massively increases my histamine production, like drastically, from the heat of the sauna, right?
Yeah.
And as a byproduct, my blood glucose goes so high that it's like it's like I've eaten like 10 bags of sweets or something, right? And that's just from the heat. That's from the heat release, and it's, for me, it's histamine related. If I take a binder before the sauna, 20 minutes, half an hour before, I don't get a glucose response in the same way, because my body, it immediately binds up that histamine and it bundles it and it gets rid of it, right? So you can use binders pretty effectively to lower histamine, quite quickly, within 20-30 minutes in those cases for me. So I was using like charcoal, but I'm definitely going to try the apple pectin next time I have a sauna and see how that affects it as well. And also things like PEA, that'll also reduce things like histamine related blood sugar spikes, because it stabilizes the mast cells, right? So if if you're having very high blood glucose after a meal, so just wind it back for 1 second. So obviously, high like blood glucose, issues with blood sugar, hypoglycemia is, and anxiety and depression are often muddled, like slightly muddled, confused, right? So like issues with blood sugar management are often confused with issues with like mood, because it's it's energy related. And so to ensure that your body is coping with stress well and dealing with these things well, having a well balanced reaction to the foods you're eating is obviously beneficial. So myself, as an example, a few weeks ago, I would eat a meal, and within 2 or 3 minutes, my blood glucose has elevated off the chart. I haven't had time to even to digest the food yet, right? My body, it hasn't,
Yeah.
it's barely passed into my stomach, and my blood sugar has already doubled. That's nothing to
Yeah.
do with food. Yes, I mean, it's nothing to do with the energy within the food. What it's to do, because it would also happen on a low carb meal, it would also happen if I ate a meal that's low carb to a lesser degree, but it would still happen. Whereas if I would take something to stabilize the mast cells prior to the meal, it reduces the blood glucose spike immediately, and it also calms the blood sugar levels down postprandially as well within the next 2 hours as well. And that is partly because eating is, although it's not a stress, although shouldn't be seen as a stress, your body can treat it like one in those instances if you're very sensitive to histamine or whatever it might be. And so by taking something like PEA, quercetin is a really good thing for stabilizing mast cells as well. Progesterone is really good for stabilizing like any of these things that stabilize mast cells will help you manage your blood sugar levels better, and manage histamine and things like that better as well. So just a side note.
Yeah, that's extremely important, because some people think that it's certain carbohydrates that spike in their glucose tremendously and others don't, which is possible. But this histamine side of things, I think like most people are completely overlooking. But two more things before we end this podcast. The worst binder to ever try to mix with anything is sodium alginate, bro. That thing, you can't dissolve it. It remains sticky. You need like special equipment from a freaking lab to dissolve it. But otherwise, it works synergistically with modified citrus pectin. It's amazing for getting rid of heavy metals, but it's impossible to consume. And then I think I'm going to be the first guy ever to supplement Comfusol and do stool tests before and after. So we're going to be seeing if Comfusol actually works or not. I'm super happy about this.
So talk me through what you're hoping to see with the Camphosol.
So based on the research that Georgia has proposed from Comfusol, is that they use one of the components, I think it's the phenyl salicylic acid in the military, to act as a broad spectrum antimicrobial. So let's say you're in the field, you eat something wonky, you get diarrhea, you use it, it fixes it, right? Boom. Amazing stuff. The thing is, like, there's almost no research on it, and Comfusol is obviously now his anti-endotoxin gut supplement. So I want to see actually if it gets rid of pathogens, because I still have some pathogenic overgrowth in certain things. So I want to see what actually happening. Is going to kill my good guys? It's going to kill the bad guys? What exactly is going to happen there? Yeah, that's my goal.
Nice. Yeah, that's an exciting one. I think the bacterial overgrowth obviously is a major cause for concern if you're suffering from stress and anxiety, isn't it? I think any kind of issues with too much of the wrong types of bacteria or too few of the right types of bacteria can be really problematic for that side. Yeah.
Yeah, like endotoxin. This is the whole pathway. Endotoxin inflames the intestine, causes it to become leaky, hypersensitizes the immune system, destabilizes the mast cells, bind to the endotoxin receptor, just widespread inflammation, hypersensitizes the sympathetic nervous system and the glutamate system. Boom, gruesome anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. So anything that can kind of calm down leaky gut, anything that can help to prevent the dysbiosis and those sorts of things is obviously really important. What are your thoughts on like the kind of general antimicrobials? Like oregano oil, or those sorts of things. Do you think that those can be beneficial for anxiety?
I would say there was a time where I did a gut protocol, but I used a lot of binders with it, like lactoferrin, modified citrus pectin, and so on. So as you are causing die-off, it's binding to it and getting rid of it. So that, for the most part, is preventing it from causing systemic inflammation. Now, if you don't do that, you don't use the binders at the same time, it's going to inflame your body, because every time I've done some form of antimicrobial, like the oregano extract, without a binder, my hsCRP just skyrockets. I get systemic inflammation. My liver enzymes go up. It inflames the
Yeah.
body. It doesn't make you feel good.
No, like I've tried it before, and I was so bloated, and my stomach was so aggravated, like it was in knots
Yeah.
from because you've got massive die off, and you're producing lots of toxic compounds, aren't you?
Yeah. No, I honestly, I think it's a bad idea without doing a
Mm.
stool test, because like now we're using a shotgun approach and don't really know what's going on with the gut. Maybe you need zinc carnosine. Maybe you need lactoferrin. You don't even need antimicrobials. Like, if you just reduce intestinal inflammation, you fix your digestion, restore transit time, restore bowel flow like it's supposed to be, chances are you don't even need any antimicrobials like right away. Like, stabilize yourself first,
Yeah,
check your
yeah.
symptoms in like 4 weeks, and then maybe do something.
Yeah, my mum just had a course of antibiotics because she had like a sinus infection, and her microbiome is not, it hasn't recovered very well from the antibiotics, and she bought some probiotics, and it made it a whole lot worse for her, right? Like it
Yeah.
aggravated it further. And so she was asking me what my thoughts were. And my answer to most people on the probiotic and gut side of things these days is like you can take probiotics like you can do a broad approach to probiotics. Some might stick, some might not, some might help, some might make you worse. Um, and so it's not a conclusive way of fixing anything. The best thing, in my opinion, that anyone can do is just ensure that the environment is appropriate for hosting the ones that you want, right? So anything that you can do to improve the environment is the most important thing. And you do that by repairing the gut lining. You do that by removing toxins. You do that by using binders. You do that by including some good prebiotic fiber in the diet as well. And I think that if you do those things over an extended period of time and avoid the things that cause gut issue, like high alcohol consumption, etc., that can cause issues with the gut, heavy antibiotic use, and whatever else. I think if you do those things for an extended period of time, then you're going to have a better outcome than if you just take a load of different probiotics and hope that some stick. To be honest, I think that's for me, that's where I've seen the most benefit is by not really including on. I have probiotics, but none of them are to try and improve my gut health. They're targeted for different reasons, right? So it's like
Yeah.
L-Reuteri for Leydig's function, and obviously the Plantarum for I don't whether Plantarum improves my digestion or not, I don't care. I'm using it to reduce. It's got a very specific target, and then in terms of general gut health, like I think things like apple pectin, fantastic. I think things like zinc L-carnosine, amazing for gut lining. The the latrosotite acetate that I've been taking, I think is a really interesting thing for the gut health. So I did want to talk about that compound today a little bit because it's linked, or it's used, and its development is for treating people with gluten intolerance, right? So
Yeah.
it fixes leaky gut caused by celiac disease, and celiac disease, gluten intolerance, heavy hitters for anxiety, right? Like real heavy hitters, like big correlation there with those things. Yeah. So it's a really interesting compound because it's specifically. So I did an allergy test. I'm not allergic to wheat, gluten. I don't have allergies there, right? I don't have any. So you might think that you avoid this product because it's specifically targeted for that, but I don't think that's the case at all. And I think that it has real promise for just general issues with high LPS, because it's gonna stop the endotoxin from getting out and into the system. So I think it's a really useful compound for that.
Yeah.
See, it's the
So
only
how do you
it's
are
the
taking
only
it?
it's the only peptide that I'm taking that I take. It's like I'm not a like I'm not really a peptide guy, and it's a peptide, right? I know that lots of things are peptides, but it's
Yeah.
is a peptide, and I've seen real improvements, over the periods of time that I've been taking it
We actually have some that we bought from my wife, but I've never used them myself. Are you using it orally as well?
orally. Yeah, yeah,
What's
yeah.
the dose? I
So,
think it's like 50 milligrams or something, right?
um, once I can one sec. I've got it over here. So the one I've got is 250 micrograms.
Okay. Right. Yeah, maybe I forgot the dose. But what did you say exactly was the main benefits? Is it mainly like just feeling less inflamed, like lower histamine symptoms?
Yeah, yeah. So exactly that. So um, you can use it like I've been using it before a meal, and that definitely has a very similar effect um, to something like PEA in terms of managing histamine symptoms. And then also, I think over an extended period of time, you have just like generally less inflammation in the digestive tract, essentially. Um, I think that in combination with a binder, for example, would be really. I think you're just going to hit all angles really quickly. So, for me, something like larazotide and the apopectin, I think, could be a real simple combo. I think zinc L-carnosine is. I don't know if it's equally as effective, but I found that to be really beneficial as well. So I think I'm a big fan of both. But it's as my histamine comes down, so does my cholesterol, and so like there's lots of positive effects of improving gut health beyond all these things. So I do think that it's a really useful thing to include. Um, and I mean, I also do think that focusing on lowering histamine intake for a period of time during that will also help as well. It just gives
Yeah.
it more chance to
Yeah.
do the job, right?
Yeah. We're definitely going to be talking more about this specific supplement in an upcoming episode. But have you ever tried higher doses of augmentin?
So the most I've ever supplemented with argmentine is probably like 2 to 3 grams a day, which
And
I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's not considered a high dose as such, is it? Really, it's a moderate dose. Yeah.
yeah, like how pronounced is the effects for you? Do you feel like it's just obliterating like anxiety and like hyperstimulation, so to speak, or how do you feel?
So I feel so with argmentine, it definitely has a very quick calming effect. There's lots. I mean, there's lots of research on augmentine for. Obviously going to talk about this more in the next episode, but there's lots of research on augmentine for treating depression and anxiety. Right. This isn't something that we've discovered. This is something that there's proper research on this. Right. There's good info on
Yeah.
this, and it definitely has a calming effect. I said to you earlier before the call that it has an impact on my blood glucose levels. I think it helps I think it helps with like replenishing glycogen stores and things like that. Even without carbohydrate intake, it might also do that by the fact that it's reducing stress hormones.
Yeah.
Obviously, if stress hormones are high, then you have insulin resistance when stress hormones are high, right? And also you're going to have higher glucogenesis as well. So it's like it's a double whammy when stress is high. But it definitely has a calming effect. I've experimented it with taking it before sleep, and it definitely helps to support my sleep. And as I said, my blood glucose levels would drop lower than normal if I take that before sleep as well. So it definitely has a calming effect on my nervous system. That it has a calming effect that I feel, and then it also has a calming effect that I don't feel that's actually physically happening as well. So it's something that I mean, like I think I first bought it like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, something like that. But I think it's a really useful part of somebody's nutrition if they are struggling with anxiety and things like that. And then also it supports or it encourages LH production as well, right? So we'll talk about this more in the next episode, but free androgens, really important for mood, right? So like having available testosterone is really important for how you feel, your confidence, your energy, like wanting to get up in the morning and go do shit, get shit done. And augmentin also helps increases LH. So it's a win-win, right?
Yeah, yeah. All right, dude. I think this summarizes it really well because like we can just like keep on talking about this. This stuff is so amazing. I love talking about this. So one more thing before we talk about it next time, because I definitely want to talk more about augmentin. But last night I was talking to David before we started this call. Took augmentin last night again with PEA. And I had some of the most peaceful sleep. Just wake up. I woke up. The sun was already up. I was like, "Oh, the sun is up already. This feels so peaceful." And you start working, and your day is just so great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I had a client, like one of my online coaching clients. He was taking like high dose melatonin, and he was waking up feeling like he would fall asleep. You know what it's like when people take high dose melatonin. They'll fall asleep okay, but it doesn't actually help you sleep in general. Like you tend to wake up more. You tend to not have as much, or you have an equally poor sleep to if you take it. The benefit being is that it just knocks you out pretty quick, right? And
Yeah.
and I said to him, I was like, look, have you tried augmentin? So I got him to try augmentin, PEA, and a small amount of pregnenolone, right? And he messaged me the next day, and he was like, what? Like he was like, what happened? Like he felt like he'd like because his sleep had been so bad. He was like, it was like I'd gone under anesthetic, right? Where you fall asleep and then you wake up. It's like 2 days later, and you're like, whoa, what happened? He said that his sleep was like, he said it was just crazy. And I was like, I think it's because he'd been relying on melatonin so heavily to fall asleep, and it wasn't actually helping in the quality of his sleep. And obviously, the combination there of augmentin, the PEA, and the pregnenolone, it just had such a soothing effect on his nervous system that he was able to have proper deep sleep for the first time in a very long time. So I definitely think there's a lot of scope with these sorts of things for sleep.
Yeah, I actually got almost close to like 3 hours of deep sleep again, which I haven't been lately for some reason. I think I've been like, since I've used some antimicrobials, it again like messed with my gut a little bit, and then my deep sleep started to decrease. But now, like yesterday, was like close to 3 hours. So yeah, super happy with that. But
Yeah, that's
before
amazing.
we
Yeah.
continue talking, I think that's a great place to stop, and then we will check you guys in the next episode. Cheers, guys.
Yeah.